Well, this is a very short continuation of yesterday's video where I was doing some washes using these pigment washes, which are from Lifecolor, and a variety of them that they use for vehicle washing. And I made a mistake basically, where essentially I washed them onto the base colours that I'd done on here, which was a combination of Israeli sand grey and olive green, which I'd done a very quick camo style on these Battletech models. Now, the problem I'd created for myself is that I was painting onto the matte coat on here, and traditionally they recommend with these pigment washes to paint them onto a glossed model. So you might be doing a big tank and you'd do your base camos and colours, and then you would do an airbrush spray using the using a gloss varnish and follow up with pigments, and that way they wash neatly into all the various different panel lines on the model. Now what I've done is I've used this here, technical Ard coat it's called. It's a Games Workshop paint. It is just it's just basically a standard one of their paint ranges that's, well, they call it technical, and it's a clear varnish. So essentially all I did this morning is finish the camo on this second Raven battle mech, and then I glossed it really quickly. I used a massive brush for it actually. I used it's problem with these Games Workshop pots, they don't close very well, but I used this Graduate De Laroni size 6 to put the gloss on, and that's just gone on really quick. I'll splash it all over really, so that then when I go on with the various different ink washes, sorry not ink washes, pigment washes from Lifecolor, I can then be sure that the colour is stripping off correctly. Because if you have a look on this one on the side here, there's a green area here on the desert sand, and it's kind of stained it rather than being removed by the remover. I've ended up sort of staining the greener colour onto the sand areas, which is not ideal. I'm not going to repaint this one though. I mean, both of them are far from finished, but I was quite happy with areas on there. I mean, for example, if I can find my pointer, I'll find something to point with. The areas around, say, that there, you can see the ink pigment, sorry, has washed neatly into that area, and it looks quite effective. It shaded it, it's done it really quickly. I mean, I couldn't have done anything as quick as that. So where was I? Right, pull up the paints, washes, and get myself a decent thin brush. When I say thin, probably not too thin a brush actually. I'm going to use a size 0 here. Okay, so put it in there, make sure my lighting's correct. I'm always having a problem with the lighting. And pick a colour. Now I found the sand was a bit too sandy, and the dark brown was probably a bit too dark brown. But if I do a mix of them I should be okay. So if I get some of the, well, the black grey was interesting too, but I'm going to go for burnt umber, and that's black umber. I'm going to go for the burnt umber and mix it with some of the colonial dark and see how that goes, and just see how quickly it can be pulled off with the remover, which is part of this technique, is to remove the paint after it's gone on. So kitchen sounds coming through, we'll just shut the door. God, terrible, don't get everything prepared correctly. Right, so I'm going to use a bigger brush actually. No, I'm not. I'm going to use a pipette to decant some of that burnt umber into this tray I've got here. So that's in. yeah, this is just a plastic keyboard tray thing that I've had for a while, and I'm just using it to put the paints in there. I've also got my wet palette over here, which is currently not in use because I'm just doing it with these ink washes. Colonial dark sand, I'm going to use that to make it a slightly lighter colour. So another pipette, drop it in there next to the, probably need a bit more than that. Okay, now here we go. So now to sort of blend these two together to get an ideal colour that's not too dark. Somewhere in between the two. Probably okay with that actually. So onto the model, and here we go. I mean, I'm just going to splash it all over, and because the gloss varnish is on there, it very much goes into the panel lines with, which is what it was going into the panel lines yesterday as well, but it was also staining. The pigment was staining the base colours on there because the matte was ever so slightly textured, the matte base. When I say slightly textured, it wasn't textured paint, but it was, well, if you rubbed your hand over it, it would be very dry and ever so slightly absorbent, really. So because I'm going to use the remover, it's going to, I can splash it all over because I'm not worried about, I'm not worried here about just going into panel lines with this pigment. I'm literally going to go into everything. And then pull off the with the remover any areas that I'm not so happy with. So I might use the sort of slightly darker colour up underneath here, the burnt umber, just because it's underneath and it's not going to be seen as much anyway. Yeah, when I was using this hard coat and painting it on, I literally used that big brush, as I said, and didn't worry at all about being careful. So although it feels like an extra stage, it's like, oh well, if I've just done the base paints on this model, why do I want to gloss varnish it? It's an extra step, it's going to delay things, but it actually was very quick. And well, if you gloss varnish as well through an airbrush, it would be even quicker to spray on, but with such a small model you may as well paint on the gloss. And right under, you can't see what I'm doing here, I'm going right up under the beak of this Battletech Raven with that brown, and making sure I've got some in the side of that gun. So it's looking okay. And that'll do. I mean, now unfortunately I need to have to wait for it to dry, but you don't have to wait for it to completely dry. Yeah. Two things will happen with this. Obviously, to start with, these pigments are matte pigments, so they're going to dull down the gloss. The second thing is once I've used the remover from Lifecolor to remove it off the higher areas and blend it in a bit, it's it's going to finally, when I've finished all the other details on there in the base, it will get a dull coat. And I use the Tester's spray dull coat, and I'm just looking around for a can of it. Yeah, there it is, Tester's Day dull coat, and a quick view of that there. It's great stuff. It's obviously got to use it outside. It's a flat, clear lacquer, but I find it comes up very dull when it's finally sprayed on. I tend to use that on all my models. In the UK, it's not as easy to get hold of actually, so I have to sometimes dig around on eBay to find it. But it's good stuff. I use it across most of my models really as a final dusting to matte them down. So that means that when this model is complete, it will be dulled down by that matte. I just looked along there and I thought maybe I could just put a bit more of that darker stuff into there. Okay. So I don't know if there's, obviously there's quite a few followers still of the Battletech game. I haven't played it for a couple of years now, although I do have a lot of models for it. I don't have any local people ready to play. See, there's an interesting thing on the side there. It's sort of ended up running down the side, but I can clean that up when I use the remover. I think I mentioned this yesterday. That weapon there isn't a standard one from any of the Battletech ranges. It's from a 15mm sci-fi company called Kurasan in the US, and it just came off one of their models as a spare. So I stuck it on there. Thought it looked okay. And also on this one that's from yesterday's painting, which I filmed as well, that has a different weapon on the side on there, and I believe that is also possibly a different weapon and not from the Battletech sort of universe models as well. So I'm feeling now that I've nattered. Also, well, while it's drying, why not do a few things, like interesting things. So I'll tell you the specific height of this model, which is Battletech 6mm scale. And it is almost precisely, well, if you're to the top of the body, it is just under 4 centimeters tall, really, in terms of the model. Do that in a way that you can actually see it. I'm going to hold this. Right, there you go. So yeah, it is about 4 centimeters top to bottom. So you could use it for 15mm gaming as well if you wanted sort of robot style chicken walkers running around, but obviously I'm using this for the 6mm scale Battletech, and therefore I'm quite happy with it being that smaller scale. Right, I reckon that might be dry now, so I'm going to get some of this. I'm going to say dry, it's dry enough to remove this paint, so I should get that. Probably use this size 0 brush from Tamiya Pro. I may decant that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Get some of that out of there and into the tray, which is the removing fluid. You get a free pot of that in with the sets. So there's the set, and it does come with a free pot of the remover. You know how free that is. Does it say free? Yes, it says plus free. You still got to buy it in the pack, and obviously there's plenty of it, because if you buy another one of those sets, you get another free pot of this in there as well. But they do sell them individually. You know, Lifecolor do all their colours individually and in those sort of group boxes as well. Let's have a look. Is that looking okay on there? Yeah. So now this remover should really work. Unlike yesterday, it should really strip off from here. So I'm trying to get a bit on there that you can see. It's quite subtle. But obviously at the same time as removing, it is clearly pushing the pigment around. So if you're pulling it off the top area, it's still going to go down into a panel line. So let's do it on the side of the weapon there. Hopefully you can see that is actually happening. It's somewhat challenging to see whether it's being captured on there okay. Yeah, so just sort of bouncing around different areas to come back on the side of the beak here. I'm going to call it a beak, it's a raven, it's as a model, and it does look somewhat beak-like. And I think one of the other things with this technique is that realistically you're not going to see it look sort of in its all glory style until it is dull coated as well, because the gloss coming through means that I mean the finish doesn't look as nice as it could be, but it will look better when it's removed. Sorry, not removed, dull coated. See, there's that interesting area where it is sort of pulled in the side there. And hopefully that's zoomed in enough that you can see that it has neatly pulled that pigment off the higher areas, so as well as sort of pulling it off with the brush, so I can see some of the pigments going back into this pool, or this little pool of decanted remover, but it's also blending it more neatly and avoiding the larger panel areas from looking too sort of stained with the pigment. Probably argue that that yellow bit there could do with sort of thinning down a bit. Likewise on the other side, it's sort of pooled with a lighter colour in the corner. Yeah, so hopefully you can see there it is in progress, and still looking quite glossy, although the ink has gone into the various panel areas on there and darkened it a bit. I've actually got a section there that I can see it's gone on far too much in there. So what I'm doing is I'm using a bit of the remover and then also sort of wiping it off on the tissue over here so as to make sure that I'm not putting it back on the model after I've removed it. With the next brush stroke. Yeah, I mean, you can't see the end result because it's not matte yet, but it certainly feels like it's going in a better way than it was yesterday when I hadn't used the gloss to put a layer that would protect the paint underneath from absorbing the pigments from Lifecolor. So they're going to, well, this will look as dull as this when it's done, and I think it's a little bit more subtle, the result that I've done by using the remover and the inks on there. And at the moment it doesn't obviously look fantastic, it's a bit shiny, but I will do another video shortly to cover that off. Yeah, and it's very quick. I mean yesterday's video was an hour long after I'd done a base coat on here to get it to that stage, and obviously I was a bit unhappy where this green area had absorbed the ink. And obviously this one's going to take a bit longer because I've done that base coat onto the gloss, which had to be painted on first. And the only other point, of course, is that doing this in front of the camera takes time. If you're doing this at home, in the safety of your own domain, your man cave, you can obviously speed through them when you're not worried about a video or talking to people at the same time. So there we go. Thanks for listening in. I'm going to shut down now, find my mouse to turn off the recording stream, and yeah, please like and subscribe. I'm going to keep trying to do these live videos, which tend to be a bit challenging to get done. I have to run and open doors, shut doors, things like that, but thanks for listening, and see you again.